Hi, my name is Michelle Aitken from Ringwood Sewing Centre. This video is for everybody who owns a passport too from Pfaff, and in particular it's for my daughter Cara. During the course of 2015 I'm going to be teaching my daughter Cara how to sew, and the tricky thing about that is that Cara lives in London in the UK and I live in Melbourne in Australia. So this really is going to be a test of technology to see how well we can manage to communicate via video and blog while I teach her the intricacies of her new machine. To explain, she was home for Christmas this year and decided to take a new Pfaff Passport 2.0 machine back to her home base in London. So the very first cry for help has come just a week after she's landed in the UK to say, "Mum, I'm having trouble with my tension." So the very first place to start when you are having trouble with your tension is to start with the threading and the bobbin winding. Let's consider what thread you're going to use for a start off. If you're just making garments or doing general sewing, you're most likely going to be after a construction thread, and that should probably be a general purpose polyester thread. Now, not all general purpose polyester thread is the same, and I'd advise you to always buy the very best quality you can get your hands on. Don't just buy any old rubbish out of a bargain bin. It will be very uneven and it will sew very poorly. So the first thing you can do yourself a favour with is to invest in some good thread. The second thing is don't buy too much. Just buy it as you need it. Thread is a little cantankerous, and if it's stored poorly, it's not going to keep that well, and it's going to age and become dry and brittle. So buy it as you need it and buy the best you can afford. If you're sewing with pure cotton, pure silk or pure rayon, be aware that these threads, more than any other, are very, very, very temperamental when it comes to how much moisture they absorb out of the air. If you live in a moist climate, if there's high humidity, you're going to find that your threads swell terribly, and that even over the course of a few hours sewing, they will pick up the humidity in the air and swell, and so you may need to adjust your tension more than once. If you live in a really dry climate, be aware that your threads will dry out a little bit faster than those in a humid climate, and that can just cause them to become more brittle. Okay, so assuming that you've got really good thread, Cara, my darling, I'm going to teach you how to thread your machine. Okay, so it's a Passport 2 that we're working on today, only because that's the machine my daughter has. The general guidelines remain the same no matter what your machine is. And the first thing we're going to use is our thread spool caps. Now, we need the thread spool caps to hold the spool of thread and stop it from wobbling around. So a large spool cap goes on first. This little rough edge comes towards the side so that the spool will sit on the flat edge of the cup. So that slides on. And then our little felt disc, which also helps to just restrict the movement of the spool, goes on next. Now your spool of thread goes on, and spool manufacturers tell us so many conflicting things that there is really no rule. Generally speaking, I put the writing so that it's facing in the direction that is logical, and so it goes on like that with the writing facing at the top here and the bottom down here. And then the last spool cap, which is your small one, will go on, again flat to the top of the spool. Okay? Now the spool is ready for us to thread, and we take the thread, and the first thing that we do is we bring it through the first hook, which is just here, and then around this lever at the back, which is a pre-tension disc. Down through the tension discs. It doesn't matter which side of the little silver Watset you come on, the tension discs are in there, and they're shaped, you know, a little bit like glasses like this. And your thread comes in between them, and they clamp when the presser foot is down, and they unclamp when the presser foot is up. So always threading with them open, that means the presser foot in the up position. So we come down through there. Now I like to put my finger on the thread up the top just to restrict its movement as I come around the bottom, and then up and through the take up lever. I can release the thread now and come down. You've got a little hook above the needle bar here, which you access from right to left, and then you have a little hook above the needle, which you also access from right to left. Okay, and then you can thread the needle. The needle threader is really wonderful. It comes down and through the eye of the needle, your left thumb will grasp the thread and take it through and around and back. I'm just going to call Jim to come in and hold the video camera so I can show you that. I'm right at the top. So coming through the first hook, through the pre-tension hook, down through the tension discs, making sure the presser foot is raised.
Is this recording?
Yes. Down here, up, and I'm holding the thread at the top here with my finger, through the take-up lever, and releasing, down, right to left at this hook, and then right to left at the bottom hook. Oh, yep. And then here's the needle threader. Now watch carefully. It comes down through the eye of the needle. Using my left thumb, I bring the thread around that hook. I'll pause so that Jim can really show you that. It's around the hook. Then laying it gently, but against the needle and towards the back, I'm going to just release it. Whoops, I've missed it. Release it backwards and slowly up. And I grasp the loop and pull it through. Now all needle threaders work that way, and you notice I didn't let it bump up at any point. Thank you, Jim. We can put the camera back in its housing. Okay, let's look more carefully at the bobbin. Notice that I can't really get my thumbnail right in there. It's nice and tight, but it's not so tight that it's rock solid. You must get a nice even tension when you wind your bobbin, otherwise you can't expect it to sew with even tension. All right, we have to hold the bobbin so that the thread, in this case on this machine, is coming off in an anti-clockwise direction. And it goes into the bobbin and around this first hook, nice and firm. Notice I'm holding the bobbin. And around the second hook, nice and firm, still holding the bobbin, and then up to the last hook, and now I've released it. I know that by holding the bobbin and pulling firmly on this thread, I've pulled it right into those tension discs, and that's really important because it's the tension discs that do that work for you when you're sewing. Now I can just snip the thread. Okay, here's the tension dial right here, and tension is something that is adjusted to suit the stitching that you're doing. There's no right or wrong tension. However, the lines here indicate that this is commonly used tension setting. So anywhere between a 3 and a 5 is common. Now today is a wet, moist day, and on a wet, moist day, I will typically find my tension needs to be higher rather than lower. Higher the number, the higher the tension. That means those tension discs are closing more tightly and restricting the movement of the thread. So I know, given the weather pattern that we're having at the moment, that I'll want it on at least a 5. That comes a little bit with experience. You adjust it as you need to, and remember, sometimes that will be frequently during your period of sewing. I'm going to just, I like to always place my fingers on my threads when I begin to sew. So I'm just going to place my fingers here, and I'm just going to, it's just measuring and just sewing that stitch out. Have a little look at it, examine what we've done and see if it's good. Okay, now good tension will be a nice, I'm not sure whether you're going to see that, a nice even stitch on the top and an even stitch on the bottom. What we're looking for is we want the stitch to look the same on both sides. We don't want there to be any difference. We certainly don't want to be able to pull it easily and pull it out. And so I have achieved good tension on this particular thread And as you can see, the setting, because it's quite a damp day today here in Melbourne, is right up high at the 5. However, if this was a cotton thread, I would expect to be on even a 7 to get good tension. So don't be alarmed by those numbers. They go from 0 to 9, and you can use any one of those depending on what gives you the best setting. Very, very unusual that you won't be able to adjust the setting here. You can technically adjust your bobbin tension, but it's very unusual. Seldom would you ever have to do it when you're using a domestic machine. Learn how to use it up here. So my darling Cara, oops, just, back we go. And that ends your, really bad camera angle. That ends your first lesson on your Pfaff machine. I think the next lesson is going to be me teaching you how to make a skirt using a beautiful pattern called the Pavlova skirt pattern. However, you're going to have to be patient because I have a lot on in the next 10 days, and it's most likely going to be on like Australia Day that I get around to making that video. So in the meantime, everyone else out there that owns a Passport 2.0 from Pfaff, I hope you found this useful. This is Michelle from Ringwood Sewing Centre. Sewing makes me happy.